To be a CEO performer at any level in today's modern work world, tune into all the podcast episodes of Cinderella CEO On Air. Cinderella success stories, CEO interviews, mentoring techniques, and more.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cary Broussard, host of Cinderella CEO On Air, and I'm author of the business book From Cinderella to CEO. Here we feature real-life Cinderella stories, interviews with inspiring people who have overcome barriers to become leaders in their fields. And today's guest will kick off our Cinderella CEO On Air series focused on finance. Cynthia Nevels, I'm calling her story Once Upon a Fortune. Cynthia Nevels knows what it takes to create businesses that scale, attract capital, and make an impact. Start.Pivot.Grow is Cynthia's business accelerator program. She primarily works with high growth female founders and CEOs who are scaling beyond hustle-driven growth and want the strategy, structure, and support to reach the next level. She advises and invests across industries, including SaaS, consumer products, real estate, and impact ventures. She was an advisor to Goldman Sachs through the NYU Stern School of Business, 1 million Black Women Business Education Program, and 10,000 small businesses in Dallas, also funded by Goldman Sachs. Cynthia, I want to know what's happened to those programs, by the way, because they're great. I want to welcome the founder of Integrality, Cynthia Nevels. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you, Cary. And hi, Michelle. I appreciate it. Very, very happy to be here. What happened to those programs? They're still going.
Good.
Yeah, they're still going. Black in Business is now venturing into its 9th cohort, and 10,000 small businesses national, and they're probably on their 100th cohort, serving thousands and thousands and thousands of business owners.
So important. And I'm so glad that you mentioned and said hello to Michelle. Michelle Bernier is a venture capital professional and strategic leader with Liberty Ventures Network. And she brings an insider perspective on how capital decisions are made. And so she'll be joining me throughout the conversation with Cynthia to ask some questions and share insights from the investor side of the table. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Cary. I'm excited to get to know you, Cynthia, as well. I understood that Cary and you met at the Dallas County Community College, where you have been teaching for 25 years. And then you have also written numerous books, including You're the Asset, No BS Guide to Private Equity and Venture Capital, which I'm excited to read. And you also wrote Big Tiny Money, How Women Plus 40 Can Build Peace, Power, Profit from Our Land. I'm excited to know more about this.
Thank you.
And Michelle will be featured on our podcast next week because she works with 20,000 investors. She brings a great resource in her background as well. So with that, let's get started, Cynthia. You're a beacon of light to me. You always have been, whether it's the pandemic, the recession, or insane politics, you power through. And you bring others along with you. You really enjoy a challenge, don't you? Tell us how you get through these things that we all experience. Tell us your story.
Thank you, Cary. I love your spirit. Even when we first met, and how open you are and how giving you are to us women in business. So I appreciate all that you do and have been doing for some time.
Thank you so much. What I've done, and I've mentioned to this before we got started, I follow you and you inspire me. You're constantly developing new concepts and growing businesses other than your own, but you too are a business owner. If you had to say, what's your biggest success story so far?
Yeah, I don't have one success story because I've served thousands of businesses since I started back in the trenches when I left Silicon Valley and returned back to Dallas and started serving small businesses through the Small Business Development Center part-time. And I fell into that position. I walked into their office as a client, and then the director said, do you want to help other people? And that's
Yeah.
how I got that part-time job. And so from that point, I have served thousands of businesses when I looked at it, and many of the names you know and some you may not. But one of the biggest successes I would say is there's a woman, Baddies and Budgets, Jasmine Taylor. She is uber successful as an e-commerce consumer product seller of her products that she's created from her own mind. And she was stuck at a revenue point of, I think I want to say 700,000, 800,000, that she couldn't get beyond that ceiling for a number of years. In last year, she was able to hit $2 million by just shifting her operation and actually listening to the advice given to help her move the needle and get out of her own way and develop processes. That's just one. There's Johnson Security Bureau with Jessica Taylor that everyone loves globally, and how she's growing to a $25 million company. She's a fantastic client who is a visionary also, but needed to clear the mud and fix her operation, and was brave enough to say, okay, I need help with this. And so there are many business owners who have viable business ideas, viable products and services, and have the guts to say, I don't know. And that's part of the beginning process.
That's so incredible to hear because a lot of times we want to seem as if we know everything. Hello, I don't. And yet, if we ask the question and find people like you to help us, we can get advice in getting to that 2 million and beyond mark. What's an example of a process that she or someone could potentially, I'm asking for a friend.
Right. Okay, fundamentally, business is business. You're going to either create and or buy something at a price that you want to sell for a higher price to as many people as you possibly can. There's nothing sexy about that. It is the exchange. Figuring out the how, the when, the what, and to whom is the secret sauce to building a business model that's going to work if it's feasible. And so we look at whether or not you've figured out the who, the what, the how, the when, and at what price point, and do you have the capacity to deliver at the volume that you need and or want. It's the other mechanics to business operations management that sometimes people have never been introduced to, don't know anything about. They just know that I have created this widget or this service that I'm really great at, and I know or I feel that people want it, but they don't have the mechanics to figure out the machine to get it in the hands of the people who want to buy. And so when you talk about operation, there are many facets to an operation and the infrastructure that you have to be brave enough and open enough to say, I don't understand the mechanics, and fill my gaps. And, even I have people who have MBAs. Jessica went to Harvard. You still may not know all of the details related to how do you function and manage all of the spokes in a wheel to achieve your objective. And so those are the things you want to be open to.
So, two things. One, your book, You Are the Asset, No BS Guide to Private Equity and Venture Capital. Would that be a good book for somebody to read and find out more about the processes? Or I know you've written many books. Is there another resource you could provide?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I would start with Grow, actually. The book that we launched last year called Grow, that's the mechanics. That is the step-by-step operational, what you should be building, developing, understanding about managing logistics, procurement, HR, marketing, sales in particular, accounting, all of those facets to running a successful operation, and introducing what should you know as it relates to HR, what should you know about marketing, what should you know about sales. I would start there. You Are the Asset is for those business owners who they've built value, but they've been doing it organically on their own by themselves for some time. And debt capital isn't the answer in order for them to scale to 50 million, $100 million. They are looking for the big bucks, the big game. And many have, I wouldn't say have been locked out. I think they're not ready. And so I'm trying to give them the tea
Yeah.
on how to build your assets and build value and be ready for that opportunity when it comes. And Michelle probably can speak a great deal more about making sure that these companies are ready.
Yes, I actually wanted to ask you about that because you say, well, that you were in the trenches working with these founders, that they want to scale, they don't know how, and they are maybe scared of admitting that they don't know how. And I guess I wanted to ask you about that maybe stage of the founder when they are in that survival mode.
Mm,
Right. And they are, hey, I don't have the revenue. I don't have the client. I don't have the thinking about all the things that they don't have or they don't know. And they're in that survival mode. But when you're surviving, you cannot grow because you're surviving. You're just focusing on the next day. So how do you help them shift that mindset from just a day to day kind of surviving thing to thinking strategically about the next level for their company?
Yeah, I like that question because I designed Capixi, which is the SaaS platform that we launched last year, to fill that gap. What I realized after 25 years in talking to a lot of visionaries, very smart people, hustlers, and go-getters, is that once we got into the weeds of understanding what's missing in their operation, the first thing that they would tell me is, I didn't know. I don't know what I don't know. And you think you got it all together because you're making some money, you can pay the bills, but somehow you can't pay yourself. And then when you're introduced to the mechanics and the secret sauce to growth and revenue generation, and you realize I hadn't been doing this at all, which is the hard work. It's the tedious hard work of management. And you realize that here's the secret. You're either going to do something with it or you're not. And this system really gives you the entire framework in one place to fix your broken operation. And think about what you're going to do, develop the action plan, hold yourself accountable to deadlines and budgets to ensure that you achieve the one objective. That's really what I really try now to focus on, is to introduce to people this secret sauce. Here's the mechanics. And I tell my brother, who has a very, very successful business, I told him Goldman Sachs let the wrong black girl into the room. Because once I learned the secrets and understood how capital works, how money works, how money is made, how to build assets, how to build value, what is value in a business, and then I could put it to my technology brain that I learned when I was in Silicon Valley.
I think they definitely let the right black girl in, the right person in. What did you do in Silicon Valley? Spill the tea on that because I'm wondering, people listening to this podcast who many of our listeners come from the corporate world
Mhm.
and they're pivoting to become an entrepreneur. As we were talking about, we're going to talk about the second act. Is someone well qualified coming from the corporate world, or do they need to go through the exact same processes that you're talking about?
Okay, so this was back in the dot-com craze when Yahoo was a baby. This was when Monster.com was the hottest thing. This is,
Totally.
Facebook hadn't even been invented then. All of the companies that we now recognize as staples in the tech industry were just babies. And it was hot, it was furious. If you could spell Oracle, you made $250 an hour. I went to work for through a friend who I knew from a consulting firm that used to be called Keen. And they went to Siebel Systems. Siebel Systems was the largest, the hottest customer relationship management technology in the country. They were
Wow.
bought by Oracle. I worked for Siebel under Tom Siebel. So I cut my teeth in this fast pace, lots of money being thrown at tech, lots of innovation and ideas written on a napkin at a dinner table, and people who were just doing it. And I thrived on that energy that I experienced when I was in Silicon Valley, which is very different from our Texas laid back environment, which I think is now trying to shift and change to high energy with, with Y'alltown in the market and so forth. But nonetheless, I started out with Siebel Systems and I got to see innovation in action. And if you had a good idea that solved an immediate problem and you found an investor who had the money and was willing to take the risk, you could be a billionaire.
Wow. And is that still the case today? That if you have a good idea that solves a problem for people, that you have the potential to become a millionaire or billionaire?
I'm going to answer that in two ways, and Michelle, let me know if you feel the same way. I'm going to say it exists, but the doors are not as open. And so it's happening because we see it across this top line of exchange of money and billions of dollars across the top. But the open doors that were kind of open have closed just a little bit. So you could
Mm.
have a fabulous idea. You could have great technology. You could be very innovative and you could be solving a problem. But accessing that million, 5 million, 25 million, $200 million raise from a napkin really doesn't exist as much anymore. So you got to work a little harder to prove yourself.
And to prove yourself to whom? And Michelle, please chime in.
I think that the doors are open and are there, but for you to cross that door, you need to do changes in yourself on the inside. Like you need to be willing to take the hint. You need to be willing to lose the fear. You need to be able to stand up for yourself. And those skills are really hard to learn. It's not like you will read a book and then you have it solved, right? It's like something that you need to work deeply inside you to be able to cross the door. Like everyone wants a $1 million company, the $1 billion company, but not all people is willing to do all the sacrifices that comes with it. Taking the hint or staying calm or building trust or even like following up. I, for example, remember when I was trying to get my first six-figure sponsorship, I first got rejected and I got a hard no. Like, and I was trying to get this sponsorship from a really big player and I got the no straight in my face, like, oh no, we don't know you at all. So we cannot sponsor you because we don't know you. And I didn't take it personal. I mean, I say, okay, well, why don't you come to one event and I can show you what it's like. And then we start building trust. And then next time I'm in your city, I can invite you for a coffee. You know, we can talk, you get to know me. And then 6 months later, I had the systems, the operational structure to actually remind myself, hey, 6 months ago, this person told you no. I think now you can ask him again. And so I did again and I got the yes.
If somebody has worked in a corporation, depending on what level, but let's say they're at the leadership level and they know human resources, they know finance, they know revenue management, they know pretty much how to run a large business. Where are the gaps when somebody is pivoting to an entrepreneurial pursuit? What do you see as most needed?
Yeah, okay. So that's an excellent question because what I see when you're trying to transition from your corporate space into your own entrepreneurial space is you may have done your job really, really well. And you did your job under a model that was designed for you, meaning you had processes, you had systems in place, you had checkpoints, you had accountability, you had project management timelines that were already pre-designed for you in order to achieve the objective that the CEO and the COO has designed for the company. You fit into this big puzzle. And that was just your space. But there were so many other spaces that you may not have gotten exposed to understand how does the whole wheel turn. And so what you have is corporate individuals who come out who are great at project management, but are clueless when it comes to accounting. They don't know anything about hiring. They don't know anything about Asana or Salesforce or how to sell or what a sales technique or tactic is. They never touched it. They just did what they did well. So they come out thinking that I'm going to be a consultant in the space of project management. Great, you're good at that. How are you going to sell yourself? What system are you going to put in place? What's going to be your processes? That's the operational stuff I'm talking about that they need to learn how to do. But I have to be very honest. People hate doing this work. It's about 40 hours of work that you need to put in before you ever put a dime in the bank to say, I'm open for business.
And that is great advice. Where do we find your books? Because and which ones would you recommend based on that scenario in particular? Where do we find your books?
Of course, you can get on Amazon, on Kindle as well, but everything is on smallbusinessmanagementtools.com.
Fantastic. So, Cynthia, there's so much more we want to talk about. We'll come back to a few things. And I've been dying to use your expression. Can you spill the tea on why you got into tiny houses? Because that is fascinating to me. Your new book, as Michelle mentioned, is Big Tiny Money: How Women 40 Plus Can Build Peace, Power, Profit from Raw Land. This was my question was, why is it for 40 plus people? But you really are focusing on the second act that people can enjoy.
It's all personal because during the pandemic, if we can remember, all of us can go back and remember when we were shut down, there was this piece when we weren't going out and we had to stay in our spaces wherever we were. And I just remember how I loved the peace. I loved the reconnection. I had a garden in the backyard. I was just this urban farmer girl. I still had my clients on the calls and the Zoom calls and all of that. But the peace, I was like, I like this and I like this a lot. And then the other thing was I was trying to purchase a home during that craze during the pandemic. And all of the private investors were buying the houses with cash, and regular folk like myself, bids were being outbid. And I probably had 25 rejections. And I took it personally. I remember crying one day of, I can't even get the house that I want. And I didn't like that feeling at all. And I made a decision when I saw Jewel Pearson on a YouTube interview, who was one of the first African American women I saw in a tiny home. I wasn't familiar with tiny homes during the pandemic. And I'm like, what is this life that she's living? And I want that. I mean, her life is simple and her bills are less than $500 a month. And she lives happy in a beautiful space out in the place where she can roam around, but she can still work remotely. You can
Mhm.
still do and live the life and earn your income in this space that you get to control. I wanted that freedom. And what I've discovered is more of us who are 40 and above, who have given their life and are high achievers to other people, whether it's the CEO of another corporation, a spouse, or children, or whatever, we were like, okay. And so that's when I really started to look at, what do I own? And am I ready for retirement? And do I have a second act? Am I going to be beholden to fighting for contracts until I'm 65? I'm really thinking about that in a serious way. And then when I started having conversations with women who are my age, between that 45 and 55, they told me the exact same thing, and they want to do something with the money that they had worked so hard for. And so when I started researching tiny homes and how homes and houses are just not affordable for hardworking everyday people like myself, I was like, I don't want to be a part of that game. I'll write my own path. And that's why I started going down the tiny home path.
I love it. The way you coach others and advise others on starting a business, you did your research.
Mhm.
One, it was a passion. This is what you wanted to do with your life to solve a problem that you had. And so you did the the research to find out where the best land? How long did it take you to do this and find the land? And did you have a lot of choices, or has all the land been bought up now? Or do other people have choices? I mean, what's the deal?
Yeah, but there's plenty of land, especially in Texas. It may be covered with trees and vines, and I talk about that in my in my book. And you just have to you have to see the vision. You can't look at the surface, and like, because it'll scare you.
Exactly. But you're a gardener.
I'm a whole farmer. There's land left, and finding the deals, there are websites where you can find those deals. I've also find that there are lots of women, high achievers, high net worth women who have money that's just sitting in a mutual fund, it's sitting in a retirement account. It's not moving, it's not doing much for them. And they're actually looking at real estate as an option, not as a whole, but as an option for them to generate additional income or passive income. It's heavy on their minds because, dirt's not going anywhere and they're not making more of it. And if you can get a piece of it in order for you to own your own land, buy a $50,000 to $100,000 tiny home, have an escape route if you need it to just reset, recharge for 3 days, and then you go back hitting it hard until you're ready to say, I'm out of here. To which a lot of 55 to 60-year-olds who have given their life to companies are saying to themselves, I'm tired, and they want something else. And so that's really what Big Tiny Money is all about. It's those people who have said, I don't like the rat race anymore, and I don't like the fact that 80% of my income goes to for me to just survive. Who the heck wants to live like that? And so I wanted to look at alternative ways that we high achievers could live comfortably in a space that's beautiful, but it's just smaller.
And you created a community, a Renaissance community, I think is what you're calling it. So somebody could purchase a tiny home in your community or elsewhere. I'm sure the book goes into this, but you've actually cleared that land that you have in Texas
Mhm.
and are selling the plot of land.
I have two lots that are in the first property, and you can buy your own tiny home. If you don't want to buy raw land and you don't want to do all that hard work of clearing like I did and putting in the infrastructure, you just want to live pretty and have a soft life, buy your home, put it on that land, lease the lot. You can use it as an investment property for short-term rental, long-term rental, or it could just be your vacation to get away to a safe place. But I'm giving opportunity to a couple of more people who want the same type of freedom. And I will do it again on another property and allow people to have the option.
I love it. So you combined a passion of what you kind of discovered about yourself during the pandemic, which I think a lot of us have. But what I
Mhm.
also love what you're doing is I've been under the impression for a long time, angel investors, private investors will only invest in people who are creating a technology company. Is that the case?
No. If you look at Isaac French's story, he had the 7 units, micro homes, tiny homes in Waco, Texas. He and his family built it for, I'm going to say 1.5 million, and they scrapped and scraped and pulled their money together in order for them to build that community. And then they turned around and sold it not even a good 18 months later for 7.5 because a big private equity firm wanted that experiential real estate. That's hot. This space is worth 1.42 trillion by 2028. Why? Because Michelle and Cary and Cynthia and Donnell want to escape on the weekend and get away from the city and just breathe for a moment. And then I'll go back to reality. And so these larger companies are saying this makes money. They are investing in it. Like Marriott is buying more of those short-term rental properties that are experiential, that are glamping related and tiny home related or micro home related. Marriott, you're just buying units, right? That are going to keep churning money.
Airbnb too, with Airbnb experiences, this new feature they launched, basically just a smaller place, but that could help to build an experience to people visiting that specific city or that specific location?
I'm assuming, Cynthia, you could rent one of your tiny homes out to an Airbnb.
I could if I wanted to. My model is going to be very different, but it's the same premise. Someone who buys a tiny home, whether they put it on their own land that they own, which I love because you're building equity, or you are leasing the land and you put the tiny home that you've bought and you have a small mortgage, but you can generate revenue from it consistently on a monthly basis. And why
Yeah,
not? It makes financial sense to me. And so as long as that's what you want to do, and I am not trying to paint it as very easy. Everyone knows that if you put your property on Airbnb, there's going to be a risk, or VRBO, that there's going to be a risk that there may be damage or something may happen, and then you have to clean it, and then there's maintenance, and then there's all these things that you have to do for upkeep, right? I'm not trying to paint a picture that it's perfect. What I am trying to do is to say that it is a possibility or an alternative if that's your passion, if that's something that you want.
great point. And Michelle, what other questions do you have for Cynthia? Because I think you had another one or two that you wanted to ask.
You have worked very closely with a lot of female founders of any age, really. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, do you think that women bring an advantage or a perspective that will also help building businesses more efficiently? Like, do you think that essentially women-led businesses will thrive better and are more attractive to investors?
It's an excellent question. So, what we have seen for the last 10 years is that it was a lot of men who were looking at these real estate opportunities who got in it first, right? And then the woman came along and they may have helped, put a nail in the wood or pick the flooring or something. And I'm not being offensive. I'm just saying it wasn't our jam initially. And then what we did is we found out that women were really great at picking locations, at picking the spot where the house should be, at picking the right colors, picking what another woman may want. Why? Because typically the woman is going to make the decision about the short-term rental that they may go vacation in. And they have certain things that they look for when they go into that vacation spot. And they have certain experiences that they want to plan for the family. So I'm not negating the importance of a woman. It just was innately already in us, and we didn't know that we could now actually own it for ourselves and build the experience that we wanted the individual to have based off our own experiences and preferences. And men do it well, but they look at the numbers quite differently than a woman sometimes would do. But I found some really shrewd business owners, women who understand keep your costs very low, your margins very high, and be very efficient in how you run your units.
I mean, you as a COO, you can see that COO, chief of staff roles are mainly occupied by women, represented by women. And I think this is because of what you said of looking at the details and just being very special about it, making it yours, right?
Yep. Yeah, that was the fun part of venturing into this space as a whole. I'm very, very honest and I'm very transparent in the book and in the course. I knew nothing. I knew nothing about purchasing land. I knew nothing about purchasing a tiny home or building a tiny home or a drill. I don't know how to put a bit on a drill, but I wanted to learn. And
You
I
do
wanted
now, right?
I do now because it saves me money. But I also wanted the experience of designing and creating a space that would make me comfortable. I talk about in the book how I walked out on the first property and it was trees, shrubs, vines, snakes, frogs, all the things. But I saw something and I felt something in that space and I felt happy and I felt healthier. And I was like, I don't care what you see with your visual eye. I see something in my mind's eye that's different. And I wanted to build it and I wanted to see if I could do it. Just like I did with the vegan restaurant, I wanted to see if I could leave my name or leave a mark on something because I've been telling people for 25 years how to run their lives and their businesses. I needed to see if I could do the same for myself.
Thank you so much for doing what you've done and showing us kind of the light in terms of really following your passion. And I want to do some rapid fire questions. How do you take an idea and test it? So you had this vision on the land that you wanted to build on. How did you take that idea and test it first? Or did you feel like were you taking a risk to do it and not testing it?
I bought an RV during the pandemic, moved out of my house that I had when I couldn't find the a new house, couldn't win a bid, lived in the RV for 2 years, and traveled all over with my then 14, 15-year-old daughter who hated the RV. It wasn't cool, but mommy's bills were $500 a month. I get to keep all of the income that I was making, pay all of my debt off, so I have zero debt. And I had a plan. I knew what I wanted to do, but I needed to see what was this tiny life like? What did it feel like? Would I like it? What do other houses look like? Let me look at the land. Let me talk to people. I went all over and then traveled internationally to see how other people live. I gathered all the data so I had clarity when I got back on what my vision was and what I wanted to build. And so, yeah, sometimes you have to take the risk and give up everything to dive into something that you really want.
And you did all the research. You did as much research as you could. And that's what investors, Michelle and Cynthia, that is what I'm hearing you both say, is that is what investors also want to know, is that you've researched your problem or your issue you want to solve, and you come up with a solution and it's backed by, well, yes, I can answer that question because I've done the research. So, did AI help you at all, Cynthia? That's my second question.
Yeah, so I put my growth strategy into Capixi number one, and I used AI to answer questions that I didn't know. I also used AI to draft my renderings of what I wanted the final houses to look like decoratively. I also used AI when I had a problem on the first land because there's an elevated slope, and I was so panicked because there was erosion, because the water would, when it rained, erode the dirt. And I was like, I don't want to lose my land in dirt. And I had to figure out a solution for it. And I had to figure out where's the best place to put this first home because my landscape architect that I paid big money to draw the plans out, once you got in it and saw it real time, I needed an alternative to fix this. It wasn't going to work the way we had designed it. So I used AI to calculate according to the Topo survey, where should this house go? And it told me exactly where it should go.
Gosh, and it's that is incredible. Then I guess my last question is, how do you search for the real human problems to solve besides going to AI? You started with your heart, I think, kind of like, hey, I want to change this about my life. But how would you recommend to our audience, they want to start a business. They're getting bombarded with, hey, you could buy this franchise. You could do XYZ. How do they search for something for a problem to solve and start a business?
Yeah, I think Warren Buffett puts it best, only invest in the things that you know, that are you are familiar with, that is a problem for you and the solution makes sense. Trying to do something that you can't connect with, can't resonate with may be a little bit harder. So, you know, keep it personal. That's just my advice.
And you would know. You've been doing this for a long time. It's hard to believe because if I compress the time, I think, oh, we're still so young. You know, we're going to be doing this for a lot longer, but let's do it on nice land in a tiny house and sip some tea, continue to sip tea together. And so I guess these are my fairy godmother tips for you out there listening. Buy Cynthia's book. I'm not saying just one book, but buy a couple of them. Go and like Michelle did, and I think she's got the ebook or the audio books. Share them with your friends, but obviously we want you to buy one. Go to cinderellaceo.com and not only listen to this podcast, there's a podcast coming out on Michelle Bernier that you'll also want to listen to. And you can always email me at cinderellaceo@gmail.com. We want to be the place that you go to for your support. And our support system is real. It's not a fairy tale. We've been doing this for a long time. We highlight what it takes to find proven paths to the palace. Around here, we're warriors who do not give up. And we want you to shine too. And that's why Cynthia and I have stayed in contact for many years because we really learn from each other, whether we're talking to each other in person or following each other on social media or going to each other's websites. We want to make all of us game changers and to change what we need to change to help each other become more successful and maybe even keep things the same in ways that are helping us. But we really do believe that it is all about the relationships at Cinderella CEO. It's a place for women and men. It's not just about women, but we do want to elevate women's voices because that helps everybody. If we're listening to the people who maybe initially we might not have searched out, but let me tell you, the best ideas, I think Cynthia and Michelle would agree, can sometimes be found underneath, um, I don't know, the roses, if you will, and maybe amongst the thorns, where you might have a harder time getting into networks that you thought were exclusionary to women. But we want to help open those doors for you, as well as men and women, to meet and find out how they can raise capital together, share capital, and grow businesses that help people thrive. That's really the message we want to get across today. And I think, Cynthia, you've done that and inspired all of us. Michelle, what have I missed? Do you have any other questions that we could ask Cynthia? And Cynthia, is there anything else you want to add? Chime in. I'll be quiet for a minute.
It's a beautiful summary. Cynthia, you left me impressed by everything that you do and everything that you stand for. I think that we are very values aligned. I didn't met you before. I met you through Cary and this podcast, but I'm so happy that I finally did. And I guess I wouldn't be shocked of us being a lot aligned on so many things because we work in the same industries. We see this every day with founders, with investors. And I think what we're doing here with Carrie and just opening up this podcast to this new segment is just making people see what we see. And I think getting rid of some of the myth about being an entrepreneur. And we want them to see that this is about you, that this is about your personal story. If you have an issue, you have to trust that other people have that issue as well. And because you're going through it and your own path, your own solution that you build can be the solutions that others have been looking this whole time and they don't know. So because they don't know, that's why you need to share your story like you are doing right now, Cynthia, and tell others, hey, here's what worked for me. When you can solve someone else's problem, that's when you have a business, and everything else you can learn along the way, but you need to work on yourself, your personal story, your path, your emotional intelligence, and especially the ability to resist the hint and just stick with that. At the first moment, you're going to get a lot of no's, but you still need to trust on yourself. And I think those are all the things that I learned from you today, Cynthia. Thank you.
I love to hear that. I mentioned in the post that no one's going to come and save you. And I realized that in the pandemic. It made me a little sad. It made me worried about the future of doing this alone as a single woman, single mother, risking all of the funds and income that I had made and betting on me. So many people are afraid to bet on themselves. They're afraid to lose it all. But you know what? I wasn't afraid to lose it all because I've rebuilt from ground zero before.
I hear you. Thank you for spilling the tea. You're the ultimate Cinderella to CEO. I want to thank you. Let's keep in touch. Let's do a follow-up. Is there anything with the tiny houses project that you want to end on? I know this podcast will probably run before you have your visit. I think you have a tour coming up, but will you schedule tours in the future of your land that people can come see the tiny houses?
I will. I did that, creating an immersive experience for people to actually touch it, breathe it, see it for themselves. People love that because they just want to see, is it for me? And so I will host. We have one March 7th, and the book is out, the course is out. And if they want to follow the framework I follow, I'm giving it all to you. I'm not gatekeeping. I'm not keeping anything from you. I'm not upselling. I'm giving it all to you. If you
Wow.
decide this is the life and freedom that you want, here's what I followed, and then make it your own. You don't have to do it the way I did it. But that's just been me since I was a little girl. I'm gonna give it to you.
And it works for you and it works for us. And we are very, very grateful to you, Cynthia Nevels, for being a guest on our podcast today, Cinderella CEO on Air. Michelle, thank you for being our capital correspondent. We'll talk to you all soon. Thank you for coming.